Inside Foos presents FoosTalk Live.
Ready to sing for us? No Rick Astley this week, I hope, Mark Torres.
Right. No, I'm not singing. Am I singing? Do I have anything?
You should go ahead.
What are you, talking to your manager?
I was thinking of adjectives.
Christmas,
Oh, there
I
it
gave you
is.
my heart.
Oh, no.
But the very next day, you gave it away. This year, that's the worst. I want to punch that guy in the mouth.
It's FoosTalk Live.
You talking to me?
Compelling and lively banter.
Are you going to talk to us?
Talking foosball.
Foosball was how I measured my value as a man. You took that away.
Players and fans, promoters and pros. Unedited and raw.
Talk.
Living in the moment.
We have a lot of important things to talk about.
All while practicing social distancing.
Cool. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Let's get this thing started. FoosTalk Live. Coming to you live from the studios of Inside Foos, it's the 90th episode of FoosTalk Live. Brought to you by InsideFoos.com, offering monthly subscriptions with access to some of the most exciting matches ever recorded, plus live tournaments, pre- and post-show analysis, interviews, and original programming. Sign up now at InsideFoos.com. And brought to you by ProtectoFlex, the world's premier foosball safety accessory. Go to Protecto-Flex.com. Brought to you by Rodlock. Practice more, reach less. The best practice tool in foosball. Visit rod-lock.com. Brought to you by 518 Prints, one of the best printers of promotional items and foosball apparel. Visit 518prints.com. Brought to you by Foosballers the Movie. This Joe Hessling foosball documentary is now available as a worldwide download at foosballersthemovie.com. Also brought to you by the USTSO, helping to usher in a new era of competitive foosball. Become a member at usafoosball.com. And brought to you by Foosball Clubs USA, promoting foosball through school systems all over the United States. Make a donation today at foosballclubsusa.com. Well, hey there, it's Tom Robinson, the day after Christmas 2021. This is the 90th episode of FoosTalk Live, the last one of 2021. We're looking forward to it. And you know, having conversation about foosball is always much more effective, much more enjoyable when you have someone who knows what they're talking about to talk to. Like, let's say, the greatest play-by-play foosball announcer of all time. Jim Stevens, how are you?
Good, Tom Robinson. How are you? Hopefully you're staying warm up there in the foothills of the Adirondacks there in New York.
Warm is a relative term. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have to kind of warm ourselves from the inside out, mostly.
Yeah, exactly. That's for sure. And up here in the mountains of southwest Colorado as well, we've had a bit of snow this weekend, anticipating a little more coming up, and some very cold temperatures this week as we really head into winter, and we head into the last week of what has really been an interesting year in so many ways.
Yeah.
Across the vast spectrum of life, but also in the world of foosball. Really a year where we kind of got back into to playing on a somewhat regular basis, trying to kind of discover that normalcy once again of touring and becoming a professional sport. And it's been a bit of a challenge at times. Yeah. And I think we still have some challenges ahead of us as we move into 2022, many of which we have documented here on the show.
Can we
last show of the year?
Yeah.
Number 90 overall.
Number 90. Can we say that 2021 was not a total loss? I mean,
not a total loss. Right. No. Certainly, I think we learned a lot from this year.
Oh, yeah.
And continue to as well. And that's really one of the most important things in life, of course. And when it comes to professors, of course, we've got a couple of others on our show tonight who you count as teachers of a sort.
In that regard, Jim, I have to say that there's this odd feeling in the air for tonight's show. It's kind of something like, toxic? Just forgive me for saying that, but it just seems like, we're fixing for a fight tonight.
Oh, okay. If you say so.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have some cool things tonight on the show. It's going to be another good one. And as we kind of all have our Christmas hangovers to some degree.
Yeah.
But we're counting down numbers 11 through 20 on our top 50 greatest players in the history of the American Tour tonight. And of course, been a lot of controversy with our first 30, counting from 50 right down through 21. But it's going to happen, in a process of this sort. And I don't doubt we're going to have a little bit of controversy after tonight's show as well. And again, it's the list, the only list that's ever been done like this. Is it perfect? Of course not. It's flawed, but it also, as we've talked about, really it generates and stimulates great conversation.
It does. I got this funny feeling about the top 50 tonight. There's going to be some real controversy. I'm just saying. Yeah, that's all. It's just a feeling I have.
You always have such a feel for this stuff. I wonder what Adam and Mark are thinking. And
I'm
if,
wondering.
of course, Clay's out there lurking as well.
Right, Adam. What do you think? Do you think there's going to be some unique battles this evening when it comes to this next section of the top 50?
Oh, I think we're all going to get along. It's just going to be like any other family get together where you have
that could
people
be,
with varying different opinions, and
that could be bad.
And nobody wants to sit next to that uncle or that Mark. Right.
I was going to say I know who the uncle is.
I think we all know who the uncle is in this scenario. But no, as Jim pointed out, two things that I agree with. One, we all are having our own hangovers, as it were, from the holidays.
Yes.
But two, this invites discussion, and that is to me one of the. And I think I told you all, like I was very hesitant to even try to do anything like this at the beginning. But the reality is that we're putting this out there to create discussion, to maybe revisit it again at some point in the future, rethink how we do it. But right now, this is, to my knowledge, never been done. So it's necessary.
Right.
And, I don't like being sat next to Mark at the dinner table, but these things happen. So, game on.
It's a food fight in so many ways. So Mark, what have you brought to the battleground this evening? Mark, can you tell us?
Let me tell you, okay? Some people go around the world for love, but they may never find what they dream of. What you won't do, you do for love. You tried everything, but you don't give up. In my world, there's only you.
Where's the mute switch?
What you do for love. Who's that? Name that. Who's that singer? Who knows? Come on. Who is it?
Love. Gosh, on the tip of my
Sounds
tongue.
familiar. Sounds familiar.
Is he black or is he white?
So off key.
Come on, let's go. You're embarrassing me.
I believe he's
You're
an African American gentleman.
It's a white guy named Bobby Caldwell, damn it.
Bobby
what a great
Caldwell.
song.
Jeez.
Bobby Caldwell. Gosh.
Well, Mark, in my world, there is only you.
I know. I didn't even listen to what you guys were saying. All I know is that this list is a dumpster fire of disagreement.
It is.
And fury and disillusionment with the system and the man. And the man somehow the man is Tom.
Well,
anyway,
no, the man is That
was
Clay.
A great segue, Mark.
The man is Clay. Clay, what's up? We want to find out how your holidays were from Dallas, Texas. Clay, are you with us?
Yeah, kind of. Good grief.
Kinda.
I'm mostly thankful. I got what I wanted for Christmas, and that Mark stopped singing a few
Yeah.
seconds ago.
That was probably really bad.
It was. I think that's a compliment to say it was really bad, because it was so much worse than that, and so really bad would like upgrade.
I got to hear it.
Yeah, actually, I like hearing Mark sing, because it reminds me that I too need to go out in life and just shed a little bit of humility and just embarrass myself.
What did you say? It's a children's show. This is a kid's show.
Wait,
No.
He said shed.
Oh,
We're
shed.
all-
Okay, sorry.
We're
Shed.
all children.
We
here.
should
I
probably,
agree on the.
We should
What?
probably, Clay, we should probably mention at this point, you and Mark go mano y mano with Shooting the Shot this Tuesday.
Oh,
Is
cool.
that this week?
Yeah.
Watch
this
episode-
week?
yeah.
Dude.
Final episode of the first season. Yeah.
Can't wait.
Did you? Oh, you didn't listen to it, Tom?
Well,
God.
I'm not going to give things away. I mean, I've sampled it. Yes.
Oh no, I haven't heard it.
He's got the business. He's got the whole thing, man. He's Tom. Tom is all sing. Tom is like the wizard behind our eyes.
It is fascinating, I have to say. And the topics you guys cover, wow. I'm
Pretty much all of them.
Yeah,
As
right.
immature as you would expect, and then on the other end of the spectrum as well.
if I could say this publicly, if it were in any other circumstance, I'd probably tell you both. I have newfound respect for both of you, but I won't say that.
Wow.
Yeah, and when does that show get released, Tom? It's this Tuesday.
Tuesday at 5. Tuesday at 5 on
It's at
Shooting the
5
Shot.
Eastern time. All
Yep.
right.
Foosball
I will
Radio.
say one thing about that show, and I swear that show, that discussion we had. You know that scene in Old School where Will Ferrell like blacks out and he like says all kinds of smart stuff, or he thinks it is. That happened with Clay for like 2 hours. It's a blur. I remember some key moments, but it was just an unfiltered go at it. And so I'm pretty excited. I've never heard it. I haven't heard it yet. I'm excited to hear it.
I'll
Hopefully
say
it's not too. Go ahead.
One of the funniest things on the whole deal is Mark doing. We did this a little bit, not even a bit, just a conversation about fake, like corny press conferences and how dumb like post game press conferences they're just the worst. So
Yeah.
we did like a little impromptu, like, hey, what are you expecting on Sunday? Blah blah blah. That was funny, and the funny only lasted for like 15 or 20 minutes. By the way, it's about an hour episode, and the funny went away like after 15 or 20 minutes, and then it
awesome.
got pretty serious.
What were we left with?
Well,
Serious.
Who knows? Crying.
you have to tune in and find
know.
out. It's
I like
This was
crying.
all recorded at the recent Colorado State Championships, right?
Yep.
yes.
It was.
Yep.
And it ended with a hug.
Awesome. Love it.
Mark accepted
Mark
my
was-
challenge to a hug off, because I tell people that I do, if you hug me, it ain't over till you let go, because I ain't letting go. And then
Oh man,
he
there better
found
be
that out.
video with this.
No video.
Affectionate yet controlling. All right.
There's
Sounds
enough
good.
evidence with audio. Okay, that's plenty. Wow.
All right.
Well, shoot the
You know,
shot.
Tom, I'm getting thirsty.
Me too.
What Jim and I like to do right about this time is to reveal our favorite IPA.
So, Jim, pray tell, it is the day after Christmas. What have you saved for this occasion?
It's actually something new. It's something I've never tried. Something I went down to my local ale dealer and picked up earlier today, out of Boise, Idaho, in honor of one of the individuals who's on our top 50 tonight.
Boise.
He'll be in our 20 to 11 out of Boise, Idaho. It is called the World Shaker,
Ooh.
hazy IPA from the Payette Brewing Company in beautiful Boise, Idaho. It's a brew featuring hops from both hemispheres, a natural-born World Shaker.
World
Flavorful
Shaker.
IPA with tropical, floral, and citrus notes, light bitterness,
Mm.
and incredible aroma. Comes in at 6.6%, 25 on the IBU scale.
Mild.
Let's have a sip. Yeah, kind of mild, kind of
Okay,
nice.
okay.
Not real super hoppy.
Mellow,
Kind of light
mellow,
on the
mellow.
back end, but tasty with Nelson hops, Matuka hops, Mosaic in there, of course, and then what's called the Idaho 7 hop.
The
along with
Idaho
Bravo and Citrus.
7.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully yours is good, and then for God's sake, I hope Adams is good this week.
The Idaho 7 sounds like a protest group, you know? So,
That's a
Adam,
good one.
what have you in your cold hand?
Well, I'll tell you, obviously Jim alluded to it. I've had a bad run. And also I want to say thanks to all the fans out there sending me the fan mail and the words of encouragement. Well, they haven't, but anyways, if you had, it would have been nice. They should. But what I decided on doing was, so this is, I went back to the source, to one of my favorite ones that I've had.
Nice.
And Jim, you've had this one. And I just want to have it again to make sure that maybe my palate has not been tampered with, like something weird has happened. Like I liked this once before. Yeah. I want to like it again. This is the Fremont Brewery, Disco Wolf Hazy Double IPA. And I love this one. This is what made me fall in love again with IPAs. So let's have a sip here.
Dead silence.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I've just had a bad run.
Oh,
yeah.
Really? Again?
This is good. This is still, no, this is good.
Oh, okay.
The ones that I've had have been bad. This is a good IPA. The ones that I've had have been bad. This is great. Again, all the things I said before. I think I said mouthfeel, unctuous, jammy, citrusy.
Nice.
Yeah, I got thesaurus.com open.
Yeah,
Point
I had a
is,
chance
this
to-
is good.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
there.
I enjoyed one of those with Adam out in California last month, and it was delicious. Yeah.
Delicious. Well, guys, I have to preface this IPA by saying
Milk
that,
this week, I hope.
I'm no milkshake. But I have to tell you that, honest to God, I did not inhale. Okay? Just want to let you know.
Wow.
Anyway, so
We'll need to take a lie detector on that.
yeah, right. This one is called Planet of the Vapes. Planet of the Vapes. And this one comes out of Massachusetts. Planet of the Vapes is, it's from the Widowmaker Brewing Company in Braintree, Massachusetts. It has those citrus cryo hops, which I got in trouble with last time, I believe. But nonetheless, this is an 8.1 alcohol by volume. So, yeah, there goes the show. We can take our first sip and see what happens with Planet of the Vapes. Okay. All right, yeah. Oh, yeah. It definitely has that finish that the other cryo hops, the cryo piece that I had before. Wow.
So there's a chance we will see the return
Man.
of the Planet of the Vapes as well.
The return of the Vapes. Yes, no doubt. And incidentally, on the front cover of this, there is the Statue of Liberty. And instead of holding the torch, in the hand of the Statue of Liberty is, well, it was a recreational marijuana pipe, or what they used to call a bong many years ago.
Interesting. All right, Tom.
So
So
there
there's
you
a lot
have it.
about you, and we all remember, of course, the last scene of the Planet of the Apes, with the where he realizes he's actually on Earth
Yeah.
because he's the Statue of Liberty. If you
Yes, that's right. And he says, "Damn you!"
That's right. Well done,
Should
Tom.
we have a
Charlton has
spoiler
to-
alert or something for those of us who haven't seen it?
Whoa,
Or are we good?
highly recommend
never
it. Highly recommend it. So, okay.
The original.
Cheers. So now, our honor group of the week, we have to go all the way to the Dakotas, the states of the Dakotas, for Dakota Foos. We want to tip our hats, generally speaking, to those who are about to host the South Dakota Foosball State Championships February 18th through February 20th at the Royal River Casino in Flandreau, South Dakota. I believe I pronounced that correctly. Flandreau, South Dakota. But our honor group of the week, the Dakota Foos folks.
Here's to you guys. Great tradition there in South Dakota, and looking forward to what should be a great event. And,
Yeah. Well,
congrats, guys.
No, they do.
I'm going to take a hit. It's a hookah pipe.
It's a
and
hookah
it has
pipe.
apple and cider. And just kidding. I'm not. All the talking about Planet of the Vapes and Braintree and Widowmaker weirded me out.
Yeah. So,
Oh, just
Clay-
regular fizzy water for you, and I'm
It's
sure that
LaCroix.
Clay is
LaCroix.
having some lot water like
You'd have,
last week.
yep, that famous lot water.
Lot water, yes.
Reusable plastic bottle.
I still haven't inhaled, but
Well, they're not reusable, but we do use them more than once.
oh man.
You'll think it's average, but we think it's great.
All right, guys. Cheers to everybody, and those of you at Dakota Foos as well, as we get ready for what should be a really exciting show tonight, guys.
Oh, it's going to be great. And it leads off tonight. By the way, this officially is going to be the longest FoosTalk Live Flashback in our history. So we may as well get it started.
Enjoy
With
enjoy,
great
folks.
moments in foosball history. This is a FoosTalk Live
Cartwright, pole position, goes to the short side, pull forward right to the 3 of Trevor Park, who's got a chance to tie it at 4. Trevor Park from front pin position.
Calls timeout. Wow, unbelievable. You never know when you're out of this. I mean, they were down hard in the 5th game, 2nd set, right back in the hunt of things. Unbelievable.
2 huge plays right there out of the team from Lewis and Trevor. Outstanding play defensively. I'm a believer that defense wins these matches.
Oh, absolutely. Defense wins championships. That's obvious here. Todd and Lewis have been putting up some fantastic defense here. Lewis giving his partner an opportunity to tie this up and send it to, what do we call it? Meat nut. Here we come.
Well, defense certainly wins championships, but a little offense never hurt.
Absolutely.
Trevor Park hoping for a little bit of that right here. Boy, I got shivers down my spine.
I'm telling you. Unbelievable. Just a moment ago,
Okay.
Trevor and Lewis were out.
And Collignon now has moved back into defensive posture. Trevor Park needs to take his time, needs to execute with authority. Boy, the crowd would love to see a meat nut situation, a 4-4 situation.
How many people out in those stands and how many of us announcers up here were thinking just a minute ago at 4-1, this is over.
We should have known better in this match. Here we go, shooting against Collignon, Trevor Park.
Reset.
Taking a lot of time. Park chokes it home to the far side. It's all come down to one final ball for the World Championship. It's 4-4 in the 5th game of the 2nd set. Woo! This is awesome.
Looking at this match here, of course, you have no idea what's going to happen here, but you have to know, as big as Lewis has come up time and time again, this is his time. Let's see what he can do with this.
History in the making here at the World Championships. One of the great matches in the history of foosball taking place right here in front of us. What's going to happen next?
The entire crowd is on their seats, on the front of their seats right now, just waiting to see what's going to happen next.
Unbelievable, unbelievable action here in the pits.
Collignon with the serve.
You guys are out of timeout. They have 1. Here we go.
Serves it down to its 5. Freddy Collignon looking to advance it to his 3. It's 4-4 in the 5th. Collignon goes through the lead successfully. Mr. Clutch. All up to Lewis Cartwright to stave him off. Freddy Collignon looking for the world title for the 4th year in a row. Collignon strokes it home. Frederic Collignon hammers home that shot to the near side at 4-4 in the 5th. What a match. What a clutch shot right there. We talked about it earlier on 4-4. Most of the time, only one man touches the ball. If it's Collignon's serve, and that's him.
Frederic Collignon coming through in the clutch again. We have mentioned it many times. Match ball right there. The heat is on. Frederic comes through. The defense of Lewis Cartwright has been staving him off for seems like hours now. Match ball comes through with a hammer.
Time and time again. He knows exactly what to do. He saves that one pass, that one shot. He's been nickel and diming that pull side. He just knew exactly what he had to do to put that thing away. And you can see all 4 players are just relieved that this thing is over.
Oh, you're looking at Lewis Cartwright now, all that intensity. He's smiling right now. He knows that was one of the best matches of all time.
Oh, he was just happy to be there. No doubt about it. Everybody left it on the table. Collignon left the last one in the goal to win the title for the 4th year in a row.
Can you believe it?
Listen in next time for another great moment in foosball history. It's FoosTalk Live Flashback.
Officially coming in about 3 minutes and 59 seconds. That's FoosTalk Live Flashback. Wow, Jim, that your emotions.
I shut my eyes during that entire thing, right? And that's why I love radio.
Yes.
I could picture what was going on. I could totally, of course, I watched it a little earlier today, but I still, it brought back such memories. And again, you listen very closely. You hear the crowd. Of course, the crowd was so into it. It was amazing. The response after every ball. They were screaming at the players. They could feel how special this was. You heard Adrian Zamora, our guest last week, who was officiating that match with Steve Mose, talking to the players. And then at the very last one, Fred gets the ball in his 3-rod. And as we all know what was happening there, Lewis Cartwright was in the shuffle. And you can hear it on that clip, right? You hear the shaking of the men. And then right immediately after that, after Fred scores it, he literally walks away from the table and collapses onto a regular table behind him. And just, again, a special treat this time of the year, because to me, it's the greatest individual match I've ever seen, when it comes to it. And, obviously what happened in Hamburg in 2006 was an amazing evening. But as far as individual matches go, this was the best one I've ever seen. It was incredible to see the way the ups and downs of the match, 2 sets, both of them going 5-4 in the 5th. And the way it finished, of course, just a legendary match that, in my opinion, again, is the greatest one ever.
And we can find this on InsideFoos.com, I assume?
It's going to be released here in about 10 days.
Okay.
It's on the list as I move through all the World Championships. As we continue to, I'm on 2000 now. 2000 will be released here in a few days, and then 2001 will be following that. And that also will include, of course, Johnny Horton's great singles win as well.
Nice. Excellent.
You know what's crazy about, so that was 20 years ago. So Midori was 7 years old. Sully wasn't born yet. So these are like seriously nostalgic memory that is ancient history for the new modern Fooser. And it is it's a bittersweet reminder of how long we've been around the game, but it should also be a stern reminder of how much history is in that archive, because there's so much to learn. I mean, the modern player, if they don't know their foosball history and it's there in the archive, they're missing out on a ton. They think they've seen it all. This is these are masters playing the game at their peak of play. And frankly, and this is no disparagement of the current era, there's just less players that played at that high level, at that quality level. The skill level is higher. But when you go back 20 years ago and you see these, these guys that have all this wealth of knowledge and experience playing at a high level, the skill may be less. Not to say that Fred isn't still an equivalent to the modern skill player, but the skill may look a little antiquated to some of these current players, but what's going on in between their heads, the psychology, the mental toughness, is all to be learned from. So I hope some the kids that have never seen this stuff can see this on the archive and be impressed by it.
Great point. Yeah, no, that's exciting stuff. Can't wait. So we're just about to dive into the numbers 20 through 11 for the top 50 best foosball players in American Tour history. So I would like to politely ask all three of you to get to your equal corners, please. And there'll be no pinching, there'll be no pushing, there'll be no shoving. You can
no slapping.
Raise your voice.
No slapping.
Tie irons.
But do your best to control yourself, because this is an intense list. But are you guys ready for this? I have to ask you that question. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so. And tonight we're really getting down to the true legends of the game. We're into the final 20. These are some of the most famous names in the history of the sport. And as I'm putting together the bios today, it just reminds me of how proud we can all be for taking on this project and really illuminating the history of the sport. Whether it's in the right order, whether we have the right names, whatever. It's for rather knowledgeable people about foosball who all voted and put this thing together. I think it can be trusted for the most part. But again, it's not a perfect list, but it is really an interesting one, and I can't wait to see some of the responses after tonight.
And not to belabor the point, but we're passionate about this to a fault, probably, because through the day, and those of us that are in the Facebook message discussing it, we didn't agree on it. We arrived in a place of consensus, I suppose, but we have passionate disagreements about these final 20 players, and it's an engaging experience, and we respect each other, but I don't respect them. Anyway, go ahead.
No, you guys all have opinions, but they're all wrong. Is how I look at it.
Oh, man.
But Jim, you're as blind as a bat. Let's go.
Oh, and Adam is strategically quiet in this discussion.
What?
Strategically.
No,
quiet.
I wrote all their names in my binder and then crossed them out over and over again about 1,000 times. You know how I do.
Always rethinking it. Okay, well, that's a good thing. All right, so guys, here we go.
Throughout the history of professional American foosball competition, the top players have waged war. Many have tried, and many have failed. Inside Foos and Foosball Radio unite to bring you the names of those who stand above the rest. The greatest players in American Pro Tour foosball. From the 70s, 80s, 90s to present day, we are proud to present the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Pro Tour History. This list has been compiled by experts, hermetically sealed in a mayonnaise jar, locked in the vault of the firm Stevens, Torres, and Gilson, and hand-delivered under armed guard to the studios of FoosTalk Live. Each Sunday until January 2nd, 2022, we will reveal the top 50 foosball players in American Pro Tour history. Tonight, we present to you the players ranked from 20 through 11. We continue with the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History. Coming in at number 20, Rick Martin.
Yeah, Rick Martin, a great Northwest player out of Idaho. The rocket launcher, one of the great nicknames, I think, in the history of the sport. And he was one of the true greats of the 1970s. Rick was a talented athlete. He was a baseball player as a kid, and he really thought he was going to become a pro player. And from what I've heard about his exploits on the baseball diamond, he was really good as a high school baseball player. But he found foosball in 1976. He got addicted, and 18 months later, won the World Singles Championship in St. Louis. That's the same year. That's 1977. That same year that Todd Loffredo and Gil Jackson won the doubles title. It was Rick Martin who won singles that weekend after only playing for about a year and a half or so. And that would also turn out to be his only major open singles title that he ever won. He did win the 1980 World Championship West event title with Dan Kaiser, lost to Zeke Burns and Bowers in the final. That year they had an East and they had a West World Championship, and the two winners of those in each category faced off. He's showing his versatility. He also finished second to Gil Jackson at the very famous 1979 San Francisco Goalie War event. We've talked about that with Gil and his prowess as an offensive player at goal. a guy that was truly, when you talk to his contemporaries in the 70s, they always speak of him so highly, not only for his abilities on the table, his athleticism. He was a very athletic player, really solid all around game, a push kicker. Just a great dynamic player on the table. He continued to play into the early 1980s, and he won the 1983 U.S. Open doubles title on Dynamo, and then retired. But we've heard about this quite a few times in the last 10 years or so, where players, maybe they've retired from a job, the kids are grown, whatever their reason, they've refined their love, maybe by watching YouTube videos or whatever. Rick Martin returned to the Pro Tour in the mid 2000s and actually became a very focused player. Started shooting a rollover, became a regular at West Coast events in Las Vegas. And I got to see him up in at the Moneyball event. He actually won an expert singles title at the Hall of Fame Classic in Las Vegas. That's no easy feat. I had a chance, I guess 2018, 2019. To visit with him and kind of talk to him. And of course, I was kind of in awe of him as a push kicker and as a big 1970s foosball fan that I am. I even got to play against him in a senior event up there. Just a great guy, quiet, unassuming, so talented. And then passed away, unfortunately, unexpectedly, I guess almost 2 years ago now, January of 2020. The legend of the rocket launcher continues, even to this day. Inducted into the Foosball Hall of Fame in 2012, coming in at number 20, the rocket launcher, the great Rick Martin.
Yeah, Jim, that was great. I mean, you pretty much touched on everything that I was going to add to it. I do want to say though, my dad, I talked to him about Rick at the time, and my dad knew the players, but he was on the operating side of things, and he said that he was one of the most humble people, was Rick Martin. My dad doesn't say things like that lightly, but I just do want to say one quick thing. If we were to reframe his career, when he got into it and rose as quickly as he did in that 16 month span to win a world championship, in his mind, it was his career. This was going to be his career. Baseball wasn't it. This was going to be it. And then tournament soccer fell. And this affected, it was like the Library of Alexandria getting burned, like all this information and knowledge, all these players that could have kept going on, and it's just stopped. And he came back, as you said, he retired for 2 years and came back in '83 and won those 3-4 tournaments, right? And obviously the field had diminished, but still he was able to do that. So that the skill, the talent was there, the money was not. So it's an interesting thing. It's a sad thing to kind of see what the outcome of what tournament soccer, how that worked out. But Rick Martin, of course, so glad to see him on this list.
Coming in at number 19 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History, Tony Bacon.
Tony Bacon, I had a chance late 70s, early 80s to spend some time with Tony Bacon, and we've talked about it on the show. He actually left me up at that aforementioned Seattle tournament where I had a chance to play against Dan Kaiser. But I saw Tony, and Tony was 79, 80. Was really one of the rising stars. He turned out to be one of the greatest forwards of the Dynamo era. He started on TS as a teenager and was a rising young star when the tour crashed in '81. And as you said, Adam, I love the analogy of the Library at Alexandria because it affected so many people in such a big way. The crash, this was a young kid. He was anticipating becoming a professional foosball player and making that kind of money that these guys were. One year, Doug Furry brought in $85,000. He was a leading money winner one of those years in the late 70s. I mean, $85,000, that's a lot of money. So he was affected by that crash in '81. He did continue. He was a young player. He paired up with Don Chalafu in 1982 at the U.S. Open, which was the first Dynamo major of the post-tournament soccer era. And he won that event with Chalafu, coming from the losers bracket to defeat Greg Jeep Perry and Mike Bowers in the final. Somebody in that one took third. Might have been me. And then Tony and Don would go on to win the '82 world title that year as well. They had a huge year. Paired up at '82, won the U.S. Open, won the world championships on Dynamo. Tony also won mixed doubles at that event with Jody Wittenberg, so he doubled at the '82 Worlds. And he and Donnie would reach the final in 2 of the next 3 years at the Dynamo Worlds and won for a second time in 1984. Tony would win 6 major singles titles during his career and would earn a total of 7 individual world titles during his career, which I think puts him at about 7th or 8th all time among American players in terms of the world championship wins. Part of the decision making on this list, and this is something I think we're going to look at with almost every player who remains on the list, it comes from looking at a player and asking, was he one of the 2 or 3 best in the world at any time during his career? The answer for Tony Bacon absolutely is yes. Inducted in 2014, number 19 on the list, Tony Bacon.
We did a top 5 Dynamo players in one of our podcasts. And if I remember correctly, Tony Bacon finished number 1. And I think Johnny Horton finished number 2. Is that right, Jim?
Yeah, Horton and Loffredo was actually in there as well. But I believe we did have Bacon at number 1. Yeah, at least one of us, maybe both of us had him at 1.
I think we both had him at 1. I'm pretty sure. And then I think we had Horton. I think whatever. Point being, that's exactly it. If this was about Dynamo, Tony would be number 1. We've documented that in a prior podcast. Tony being where he is now kind of tells you who's above him on the list, because Tony was that much of a wicked player. He's that darn good. Of course, if you want to hear his recollection, you could find that very famous episode. And I'm not sure if we need to retire that episode, but it's pretty exciting. I'm not sure if he has all the facts, as we may have them historically archived. That being said, another thing that's a testament to Tony's greatness is how many players he affected by his style of play, how dominant he made the brush series. Lewis Cartwright was a dominant forward on Tornado, and his top wall brush series was a direct copy from Tony Bacon. James Castillo, when I first met James Castillo in San Jose, California, 89, he had a dynamo table. He's doing a far wall brush series. He patterned everything after Tony Bacon. Tony Bacon inspired generations of far wall brush series passing, but most importantly, the aggression and the accuracy and precision of what someone could do on the 5-bar. Not unlike what Tony Spredeman has shown the world in the past 20 years, what you can do with 5-bar passing. Tony Bacon was the same kind of catalyst and genesis for great 5-bar passing for generations after him. So I love Tony Bacon's foosball contribution.
Now, the player coming in at number 18 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History, Steve Murray.
Yeah, old dad. Old dad, of course, the first player to ever triple at a world championship event back in 1987. Truly one of the greatest competitors the sport has ever seen. I mean, this guy, we've talked about him. He's been on the show numerous times. He's a great friend of all of ours. But what a battler on the table. You know, Steve, of course, had the great 5, had a very good 3, but really it was his approach to the game. It was his aggressiveness. It was his intimidation of others. You know, he won a total of 7 individual world titles during his illustrious career. You know, he tripled in 87, but people also forget that he doubled at the 89 Worlds, winning open singles and mixed doubles, and also finished 3rd that year in open doubles. Pretty good weekend in 89 as well. And at that period, 87 to 89, 90 into the early 90s, again, this is a guy you would look at on that Tornado Tour and say, is he one of the top 2, 3, 4 players in the world? You probably would say yes, based on what he was doing. And again, I think every remaining player on the list at some point, if they weren't the best player in the world, they weren't far below that. He won 3 world titles with his wife, Gina, which is a record, by the way, for a married couple. And how difficult is that, right? And just a guy, you know, you look at his playing record, you know, right on through the early to mid 90s when he kind of had to step away from the game a little bit to focus on working for the Tornado company. He was actually kind of forced to, which kind of hurt his career a little bit. And Steve will talk about that. But he's a guy, when we look at him, of course, the man behind the Texas State Championships. You know, many of the young players, Mark, as you talked about, kind of only know Steve from that. They don't realize what a force this guy was. Originally out of Kansas City, Missouri, by way of the state of Texas, one of the great foosball men ever. Inducted in 2002 into the U.S. Hall of Fame. Old dad Steve Murray himself at number 18.
I think it's not that you're trying to understate it, but I think it is understating a little bit that Steve forsook foosball because he had to focus professionally by mandate to developing Tornado tournaments and managing and organizing foosball. If he did not have to step away from foosball, those banners would look completely different. And once again, we go back to what the more youthful modern player doesn't get a chance to see you might have heard in hockey when the goalies didn't have masks. I mean, these guys were all missing teeth, right? They used to wear leather helmets in foosball. That's the era and generation of foosball I grew up watching Steve Murray play in. I mean, I'm talking about a gritty, fiery, emoting, loud style of foosball. I was there in '90 when he beat Tracy McMillan to get to Johnny Horton in the finals of open singles, and he jumps up on the table, and there's a picture of him like he's walking on air, and there's a picture. I'm in that picture, in the corner of that picture, watching Steve Murray. That was 1990. These guys were animals, and foosball's changed and evolved and morphed into something different. And he's a memory of what it was like when you had guys that went after each other for blood on the foosball table in the most entertaining and best of ways. And yeah, sometimes it went across the line. I've personally stopped 3 fights, all involving Fernando in San Jose. Anyway, point being, when you look at Steve Murray, if he would have had his opportunity, those banners would have been completely different. He'd probably be higher on this list. And I just want everyone to remember that that piece of foosball, and hopefully it comes back one day where the emotion meets the skill level on the foosball table.
Adam?
I got nothing.
Here's the player who's ranked number 17 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History, Jim Wiswell.
Yeah, half of the team of Wiz and Fur, of course. When you're talking about the greatest teams of all time, they are in the mix. You know, obviously Collignon, Loffredo, Gumason, McMillan, the Moore and Diaz, a couple of versions. Tony Spredeman, Robert Mares, and of course, from the 70s, there was no better team than Jim Wiswell and Doug Furry, one of the sport's most overpowering forwards. During a relatively short but very successful career that began in Minnesota in the middle 70s, of course, out of that Nut Goody program that produced 5 of these top 50 players. Jim played in a remarkable 29 open finals during the years 1977 through 1980. He won 19 times on the major tour, including victories at the $250,000 World Championships in 1979 in open doubles with Doug Furry, and in 1980 in mixed doubles with Lori Schramz, his girlfriend at the time. One of the true legends of the 70s, a man whose pull shot was the fastest and hardest that many players had ever seen. He had a certain aura about him. You know, I was lucky enough to see him play a couple of times in the late 70s to watch he and Fur, if I could squeeze through the crowd, get close enough to really see them. But it was like watching a caged animal as he attacked the game. He was kind of a big guy, relatively speaking, and just the way he got on the table, the way his body language suggested that he was going to be aggressive with everything he did. It was going to be about power and speed and intimidation, whether intentional or not. But truly, when you're talking about the history of foosball, this is one of the great names in history. Of course, we lost him by his own hand, unfortunately, in 1981. And, we've talked about the crash of '81, the tournament soccer tour, and I don't think it hit anybody harder than Jim Wiswell. And inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame in 1997, coming in at number 17, the great Jim Wiswell.
I want to get to Adam quickly on this one, but I got just one quick remark. Even me as a rookie in '89, knew of the myth and the legend of Jim Wiswell, this hulking beast of a foozer that won everything and had the dead bar pull shot and just crushed the ball. That whole thing preceded him, even though it was 10 years or whatever it was after he had passed. So he's part of the forever lore of foosball. His legend will always be a part of foosball. His memory will be bittersweet. And so, funny, the players from the 70s probably think he should be higher on this list. And maybe he should be in their minds and in the spirit of his memory. But I think it's for me, it's a tremendous honor to be able to talk about Jim and memorialize him on this list. Please, Adam, go ahead.
I just want to. I keep bringing this up, this Table Soccer Digest from 1986, but I think it's important, these polls, these player polls, because in the context of that time period, this was as fresh in their memory as anything, as what Tony Spredeman is to us that are watching the modern play. And to have the best players, the top players, there's 40 players or so, ranking the top 5 or top 10 shots or intimidating players list in '86, to me, is an incredibly important document. And I'm looking at this top 5 or top 10, and I'm seeing According to these tournament soccer players, top 5 all-time defensive 5-row, number 1, Jim Wiswell. Top 5 all-time best pull shots, number 1, Jim Wiswell. Top 5 most intimidating player, Jim Wiswell. You've got the top 5 all-time greatest open doubles teams, Wiswell and Furry. Top time all-time famous toughest forwards to block on, Jim Wiswell, number 1. That speaks for itself more than just about anything else that I could say of when his peers, the colleagues, the champions in their own right, list him so high across so many other of these polls. So it's of course well deserved for him to be on this list.
Next, the player ranked at number 16 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History, Dave Gumason.
Yeah, Dave Gumason, when you look at his career, this is a guy who came up in that Minnesota foosball environment of the late 1970s and won quite a few pro titles on TS, was kind of an up-and-comer, kind of the young guy among that Minnesota group. And when you look back at his career, when he's still playing, nobody, maybe except for Todd Loffredo, absolutely except for Todd Loffredo, has really enjoyed a longer and more successful career than Dave Gumason. A guy who notched his first results in 1979, really started to have success on the Dynamo Tour when he won several titles, including a world championship on Dynamo. And, then of course went on from there to become a great tornado player as well. One of only 10 male players in the history of the sport to have won open singles, open doubles, and mixed doubles at the World Championships, joining names like Collignon and Loffredo and Spear and Bacon and the Moores and Spreadham and Murray and Atkinson, guys like that. And then on Tornado, won the 1993 Masters singles title. And then in 1996, and it's a performance we've talked about here on the air, it was one of the great performances, I think, of the 1990s. It was Dave Gumason winning the World Singles Championship in Dallas in a very memorable performance. And Mark has talked about just how well he shot it with the 2-rod during the course of that event. And then, 2001, here he is 20 years into his career as one of the great forwards. And he hooks up with Tracy McMillan, right? And not only did they become one of the great teams of all time, they also became best friends and best men at weddings. I mean, these two guys are as tight as they come. They formed one of the sport's best all-time teams beginning in 2001 and would win 2 open doubles titles on the U.S. Tour, beating Collignon and Loffredo in the final of both the 06 and 08 World Championships in Las Vegas. And we'll never forget those performances. They also have won 3 national titles together. They've won the Hall of Fame Classic. They've won the Bart O'Hearn celebration. And this is a guy that won 5 individual world titles overall. And again, I think he's this high on the list. Obviously, incredible accomplishments, world championships, but also longevity has to factor in here and just consistency of greatness. He is still a great player, still in consideration to make the men's World Cup team. And he's been a part of 5 World Cup winning teams. He and Tracy also multi-table champions in doubles back in 2010. Just really such a rich part of the American foosball fabric, this gentleman out of the state of Minnesota. When I first met him, he was living in San Diego, California. I didn't like him at all. Couldn't stand him. And we've talked about it. He'd come up, he'd be arrogant, he'd kick our butts up in LA. And then I started doing this gig and I got to know him. And he became one of my very best friends and a guy that I respect so much. Inducted into the United States Table Soccer Hall of Fame back in 2009, coming in at number 16 on the top 50, Dave Gumason.
Yeah, I'll be brief on Dave. Dave has been winning for as long as I can remember. And he was one of the first Masters I saw play when I was a rookie. He came to Campbell, California, up from San Diego where he was living. And he played in a tournament at Phil Schlafer's he owned a comic shop, a little arcade, had like 6 foosball tables in there. He added a couple more. They have a $5,000 tournament. And I saw his hesitation wall pass, and I thought, is this guy for real? What is he? Look at his pull shot. And he would tell me later that his idol was Jim Wiswell. He patterned his game off everything was because he idolized Jim Wiswell's game on the foosball table. You said it, Jim, that longevity has to be a part of this. And he's been winning for as long as I can remember. He's won in every single era. He's been a champion in every decade he's played in. And even now, he's in the twilight of his career. Him and Tracy, there's a question if they're going to keep playing, if they're going to play together, if he's wrapping it up and not going to play anymore. But even if he was to play at the next event, you're not going to walk over him. I mean, you're going to have to fight that dude to get to 5th place. And he's still a threat to win the tournament, and he's pushing 60. I don't know how old these guys are, but that's crazy, right? These guys are awesome even now. So yeah, these guys are rightfully on this list. And we struggle and fight with, how is Dave not higher? But then you look at who's above him, you think, how? So it ends up being a real struggle. Dave Gumason, perfect at this number. Thank you.
Moving on to number 15 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Foosball Players in American Tour History, Lori Schramz.
Lori Schramz, again, you talk to her contemporaries, the players, whether it's Ken Allwell, and some of the other great players from the 70s that we've talked to about Lori. And they speak in such glowing terms of this player. Generally considered the second greatest lady player of all time. And that accolade comes in spite of her basically being a goalie. She had some success in singles here and there, but it was as a goalie that she won 7 world championships. And that is the most world titles of any TS player. So during the decade, the golden era, Lori Schramz was the winningest player of that decade, and did it from the goalie position predominantly. In fact, all 7 of those were as a goalie. She had won open doubles titles as well, and did, as we said, picked up a few major singles titles as well, including women's singles at the 1977 Super Singles event. That was a big one. But it was really, and again, you talk to her contemporaries, her peers, and the way that they speak about this lady player. There's a reason she's considered the second greatest lady player. You look at her record, look it up. I mean, it's phenomenal, the number of wins that she had and what an influence she was from that goalie position. This is a woman who is considered by more than one person that I've talked to from that era, contemporaries, great players, to be one of the top 5 goalies, period, of the tournament soccer era. We're not talking men, we're not talking women, we're talking player goalies. And that's really, it was as a goalie that she did her real damage. Inducted in 1986, one part of the original class of Hall of Famers, coming in at number 15, truly one of the great players of all time, Lori Schramz.
Yeah, I've been looking at her career after when we started doing this list, and it just amazes me. So there's a couple things. I'm going to keep this brief. I didn't like to use money as a metric for this, money earnings, that is. But it's got to be of note, especially at the time period in the 70s when it was a lot of money. But if you look at the top 20, top 50 winners throughout the different tours back then, in 79, she was 4th. Ahead of players like Tom Spear, Rick Martin, Todd Loffredo. She was sitting on 19 grand, which in today's money is upwards of 50,000 probably. She was sitting on, let's see here, in 78, the year before that, again, sitting number 4th with 15 grand again. Ahead of Tom Spear, Ken Allwell, Rick Martin, all these players that we've been talking about or will be talking about. It is absolutely amazing the career that she put together in the time that she was playing. And you said this, Jim. She won open events, I believe, with Jim Wiswell. I know that our good guest that will be coming on later would probably be able to illuminate this better, Mike Green, when he does come on. But it is amazing, the fire and the tenacity in what she played. And I talked to my dad and my mom, who was there at the time, and I asked them, as far as players go, what was it with her? And they said for her, there was an intense amount of focus and fierceness that you could feel coming from her side of the table. So again, I'm really glad to see her on the list. I'm really glad to see her right here.
Fierceness and focus. Yeah, for sure.
I just used an inflation calculator, and $19,000 in the late 70s is $87,000 today.
Mama.
And Lori was a tiny little thing. She couldn't have been much more than 5 feet, but so big on the foosball table. And again, these players from the 1970s had about a 5 or 6 year career, and that was it. Which is part of what has made this list so difficult to put together. Yes, right. It was probably concentrated in terms of concentrated talent and obviously big money and everything else, number of players. It was the golden era. It was the best era ever. But you have to factor in the fact, unlike Dave Gumason, who's got 40 years under his belt, only 5 or 6 years for many of these players. Yet here they are showing up still in our top 20. And that's Lori Schramz at number 15.
Coming in at number 14 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History, Robert Mares.
Our great friend Robert Mares. He was on just with us a few weeks ago, right? And I just smile when I think about Robbie. He's so good, at selling the game and selling himself. And I mean, a very honest way. It's nothing phony about it. But he was so good on the show the night he was on. Really good. Rapid Rob broke through in the early 1990s after touring the country, of course, if we saw in the movie Foosballers, in the Foos van with Terry Moore and Evan Stachlik and company. Earned his first tour win when he won the Masters Singles Championship in 1994 in Atlanta, when that was a highly prestigious title to win. One of the tour's most versatile players ever. He continued to be one of the strongest players in the world through the late 90s and into the 2000s. It became one of only two players, how about this, to win the world doubles title as either a full-time forward or a goalie. He had won, obviously, when he played with Tommy Adkisson, played mostly the goalie position there, won 2 world championships with Tony Spredeman, playing goalie, entirely goalie, but then won it playing singles in 2015 with Terry Roux in a very memorable final for sure. He won the world doubles title with Tommy Adkisson in 1996, and Robbie really coming into his prime. He would go on, I think, and compete in 6 world singles finals without a win, unfortunately. But then he and Tommy came back in 97, finishing second to Terry Moore and Bobby Diaz at that event. He's won 2 world championships with Tony Spredeman during the 2010s and 2013 and 2016, while also winning a multi-table world championship with Tony as well in 2013. One of the great foosball men, right? A guy that has been so important in terms of the United States being involved internationally, a man who is always the first guy there to do an interview or to do a clinic. We've produced a couple of things with Noah Rosenstein and Robert Mares in just the last few weeks. Robbie's so giving. If you haven't heard the interview with him, it's 3 or 4 shows ago. You need to listen in. Truly one of the most consistent, enthusiastic, and competitive players the sport has ever seen. Inducted in 2015 into the American Table Soccer Hall of Fame, coming in at number 14 on the list of top 50 greatest players ever on the American Tour, Robert Mares.
If we were going to include international play and it wasn't just the American Tour, there's an argument that Robbie would be number 1 on this list. If you talk about his contributions, his commitment, you look at Tom Yor, Robbie, I guess Todd. I mean, it broadens it for sure, but Robbie goes up on this list into the top 10. Absolutely. That being said, the pinnacle win for Robbie, for me, probably not for him, I don't know if it's for him, was when he won open doubles with Terry Roux playing goalie for him. Because, that's a pinnacle, because I played against Robbie. I beat Robbie in amateur doubles at the World in 1990. We were amateurs at the same time. 3 years later, I'm playing Robbie at 5th in open doubles. He has Spear and I have Fernando, and we lose to get to 5th at the Worlds. That was like my real last tournament where I practiced, and that was the last. But I watched Robbie become the number 1 player in the world, win master singles, and become an incredible champion from my generation of guys and gals that started at the same time. And it's been such a thrill to watch him play. Now, I'm not easy on these guys because I don't really care what anyone thinks of my opinion. I've been very hard on Robbie. I've been very hard on him in terms of his 5-bar and whether it holds up, and if he can make it work under pressure, and if it's a weakness for him. And so when he wins open doubles at the Worlds with Terry Roux, and he absolutely dominates on the 5-bar, like that last match, he's getting through and cutting it like butter, and he's scoring every possession. He's on fire. And I never thought up to that moment that his 5-bar would hold up in a world championship final at forward. And I had to eat my words, and he proved me wrong. And I couldn't have been more happy and proud of seeing him just like come through and execute. Anyway, I love Robbie. He's one of my favorites all time. He's one of everybody's favorites, really. And it's really happy to see him this high on this list.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to switch gears a little bit, we talked about Robbie the player. If you haven't out there in FoosTalk Live world, if you have not watched his acceptance speech at the Colorado State Hall of Fame a few months ago, or a month or so ago, go find it. It's on InsideFoos.com. It might even be on the YouTube. I don't know if it's on the YouTube channel, but it's definitely on InsideFoos.com. You got to watch it. The humility that he showed, the genuine affection that he showed for the history of foosball and his players, and for the honor that he received was just eye opening. And you get a peer into how somebody like that gets to be the champion that they are. So yeah, I'm so glad to see him on this list where he's at.
Next, the player ranked at number 13 on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History, Mike Bowers.
God, this is exciting. I love the sound of the music leading into each of these. Tom Robinson, great job on this throughout.
Gee, thanks.
But it's, it's just, you get chills now as we're down to the final 13 and you get to names like this guy, right? Mike Bowers, one of the sport's earliest champions. He won open singles at the 1973 Nationals. That was up in Missoula, Montana. And then in 1974, won open singles at the Tournament Soccer International Championships at Elitch Gardens in Denver. The first big tournament, right? The big $50,000, really the first world championships. And there was Mike Bowers. And we've heard him talk about this so many times at every, he's a guy that you'll see every year in Las Vegas at the Hall of Fame ceremony at the Colorado State Hall of Fame ceremony. And it's just so interesting to listen to this guy speak about those early years. He's so well-spoken and he is so detailed on his memories, and it's like so fresh for him. And it's just fascinating to hear it. One of the game's greatest goalies. He won the world doubles title in 1980 on Tournament Soccer with Tim Zeke Burns, and then won Dynamo World Honors in 1983 with Todd Loffredo. And then in 1997 Masters. Now, back then, things were a little different. We didn't have guys that were playing at 50 and 60 years old. We didn't have tournament soccer stars, maybe outside of Spear and Gumason and Loffredo, coming back to win titles. But at the 97, maybe 98, I think it was 1998 Masters, he became the first player to win a major title while being a member of the Hall of Fame. He was in that initial class of 86 when he won open doubles at the age of 45. Which we thought at the time was just ancient. How could a man at 45 win an open doubles championship? And another thing that people forget about Mike Bowers, it's one of only 3 players in the history of the sport to earn major titles on TS, on Dynamo, and on Tornado. The other 2, Todd Loffredo and Tom Spear. How about that group, right? Spear, Loffredo, and Bowers. He was the Player of the Year in 1977, Player of the Decade for the 1970s. Mike remains a prominent figure in the game even today, as he always makes an appearance, as we said, in at least one speech, and most of the time more, at ceremonies in Vegas and Colorado. And a guy that I'm just so happy we still have around to kind of carry the torch for that era. Inducted into the original class, as we said, of Hall of Famers back in 1986, coming in at number 13, Mike Bowers.
I mentioned that list earlier, the lists of the table tournament soccer players listing each other, and where Wiswell was on that. But for intimidating players, Bowers is right behind Wiswell, is the second most intimidating player during that time period. And there's a reason for that. He was also considered one of the greatest singles players of that time period. And one of the reasons for that is he was smart. Yeah, he wanted to win. He was competitive and all that, but his defensive prowess from rod to rod, and especially at goalie, you often think of singles players. You think of them as maybe power forwards with a passable goalie game, but he was a smart player all the way around. And it's not at all surprising to me to see him be where he is on this list because of the groundwork that he laid, the persona that he gave off, and what he had continued to do for foosball beyond that time when he was more of an active player. So, again, very happy to see him on this list.
Moving on to the number 12 position on the FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History, Johnny Horton.
Yeah, this one, in some people's minds, it's going to be, maybe they felt it should have been higher. We'll see. Certainly, Horton, one of the most polarizing and controversial players ever, no doubt about it, but also one of the most talented. And really, with better off-the-table decision-making, he could have been much, much higher on this list. When you look at the talent, when you look at his accomplishments, yeah, he could have done it consistently. In baseball, they always talk about certain guys that had to go away to war for, go away to the Korean War, World War II, and lost 3 or 4 years out of their career. Well, Horton lost 3 or 4 years out of his career just because he did not make good decisions both on and off the table. One of only 3 players to have ever won world titles on Tournament Soccer, on Dynamo, and on Tornado, the other 2 being Loffredo and Spear. Johnny, when he was 19 years old, I believe he was 19, won the open singles title at the very last World Championship on Tournament Soccer back in 1981. Of course, it crashed literally the day after he won that title in 81. He then won 2 world titles on Dynamo, both in 1985, when he almost tripled. He lost to Tony Bacon in the open singles final after winning doubles with Mike Green, who we may hear about a little later, and then earned an open doubles world title in 1986 with Todd Loffredo. And the first of 2 open singles world championship titles on Tornado in 1990. So this is a guy, he went from TS, where he won a world title. He went to Dynamo, where he was one of the top 3 players on that table, and then won a world championship in singles in 1990. Picked up a few other major wins on the Tornado Tour during the 1990s, including 3 major titles in 1994 and then 2 more in 1995 when he did play full-time, but also spent a few years during that decade on the suspended list for various off-the-table and on-the-table infractions. Returned to the tour to win the 2001 World Singles Championship in a very memorable performance that, as we remember, we saw him after winning the match against Robert Mares. He sprinted around the arena in that shiny silver shirt and jumped up on a table and raised his hands, and the crowd literally surrounded him and went crazy. It was really quite a moment. It was part of that 2001 event, World Championship. We listened to the doubles final earlier. It was just an amazing year for foosball. He would finish with 6 career world titles. And that's like only 6 career world titles, right? You talk about Horton, you think, man, this is a player who could have won, 10, 12, 15 maybe. But he would finish as maybe the most entertaining player in the history of foosball as well, while probably underachieving as a player. Yet still makes it to number 12 on our list of the 50 greatest players on the American Tour. The electric, the magnetic, the sometimes prophetic, and self-proclaimed greatest of all time, inducted in 2015, the one, the only, Johnny Horton.
I had the great pleasure of being in touch and talking to Johnny a couple times earlier this year, around February timeframe. And I knew Johnny superficially. I really liked conversations in decades past, but I never had a phone call with him. And I had several long phone calls with him. And I will say this, and I won't say it lightly. Johnny is the intersection where genius intersects with madness. He is right there at that intersection. Here's a guy who remembered with precision memory a 17 and under match he played against Thor Donovan in whatever the hell year that was. I don't know what 17 when he was 17. What is he? It was like 40 years ago. He's talking about a match he played against Thor Donovan in a 17 and under singles event. I can't remember an open match I played against whoever the hell 5 years ago. I have no idea. He's a special talent, and it is a bittersweet conversation to talk about how that madness affected his decision making and changed the trajectory. And on the one hand, because he was captive, if you want to call it that, he had to stay in one spot for a while. He got tons of practice in, but that muscle memory and the attention to detail and the skill behind it. And these conversations I had with Johnny, he tells me the story of moving to Colorado because he figured he was, when he could beat someone better than a coin flip, better than 50%, he figured he had them. And Loffredo was someone he was having problems with. So he moves to Colorado specifically to get Loffredo's number. These are men that took foosball to another level that unfortunately only a handful of people now really take it there. Tony probably takes it there. Ryan takes it there sometimes, but everyone else who took it there has really retired from the game. And it hopefully the modern player finds that space to put a cap on this. Johnny is just a super talent, a super genius on and off the table with incredible mental prowess. He's a superstar. And unfortunately, he's lower on this list than he could have been because exactly to what you said, the decisions on and off the table. Other than that, I'd be open to any argument at some point why he should be higher on the list, because he definitely could be. That's my bit on Johnny Horton.
I have the old tape. I think it was probably from Hall of Fame, an actual VHS tape when Biney and Horton were playing some doubles match. I have no idea who it was. I don't even think it was a big match. They were just playing. And I didn't know at the time, this is probably 2000, 2001. So I was just getting into foosball on the tournament side, just learning the players and everything, the current players. And I remember watching this, everybody looks little next to Biney, but he looked particularly little next to him, just this firecracker down there playing. And I'm just thinking, who the heck is this guy? What is going on here? And every time I could see this like wellspring of energy, I didn't know it then, but he would bring this wellspring of energy, bring it up. And the hulking form of Biney was just this calming influence. And what I didn't know at the time, but know now through the lens of history, is that there was this fire and an ice component dynamic between the two of them. And it's so important to Johnny's persona and his way of playing. And what I have to bring that around, I ended up the next year, I think the year after that, played him in an open singles match where he crushed me. And I was like, hey, that's that guy. And he was wearing that silver shirt. And I was like, what the heck's going on? I don't think it was at Worlds, but I think he was rocking in another tournament. I was like, oh, I get to finally play this guy. And I tell you, if you've ever been in a room where somebody turns the thermostat all the way up to 100 degrees and you can just feel it change, that's what he does. That's what he did with his ability and his talent and his focus. Yeah, I would agree with you all. He could be higher up on the list, but I will say I'm very impressed that he is where he is right now. Very glad to see him.
Yeah, and I'm a little sad. It makes me a little bit sad to think that he isn't higher on this list because talent-wise, accomplishment-wise, the eyeball test, he is a top 10 all-time player, no doubt about it. And speaking of the eyeballs, he's a guy you couldn't take your eyes off of, as a commentator or as a fan. I only watched him, when he's in a match. Yeah, I have to call the action. I have to say what's going on with all four players or whatever. But I couldn't take my eyes off him. What's he going to do next? And he and I have always had kind of a weird dynamic. He was fully aware of me, right? Sitting up there. He would play to me. He would play to the crowd, but he would also play to me. He would drop my name several times during a match. And we had this weird relationship, and it wasn't always a good one. It has become a good one. The last 5-10 years when we have seen each other, it's been a hug. It's been a great deal of respect between the two of us. But again, there's an element of sadness here that he is not higher than number 12.
Rounding out this week's FoosTalk Live Top 50 Players in American Tour History, number 11, Tommy Adkisson.
Oh, man, do we love Tommy. And again, Tommy Adkisson and Johnny Horton, this was an incredibly tight race. They were within a point of each other when it came down to it, with Atkinson just sort of edging Horton out here at this position. And maybe it's because of longevity and anyway, certainly Tommy Adkisson, again, another one of the most entertaining players ever, another guy that you just love to watch on the table. His interactions with the other players, the officials, with the crowd, and me and us sitting up in the booth. He burst onto the scene in a huge way back in 1993 when he almost tripled at the World Championships that year in Dallas. That was my first World Championships, Inside Foos' first World Championships. He won doubles with Russ King in a great comeback effort where they were going up against Steve Biney, who you talked about, Adam, and Don Swan in the final, and they were down before Russ King hits a big push kick, and then Tommy switches shots from a pull to a snake. And he also won open singles that year over Terry Moore, who was considered the best player on tour suddenly that year. Won his second open doubles championship with Robert Mares in 1996, and then almost won it again the next year, finished second to Terry Moore and Bobby Diaz. But he did win open singles that year in 1997 as he beat Scotty Weidman in the open singles final, that same Scotty Weidman who should be in the Hall of Fame. Also won 2 world mixed doubles titles. One he won with Christina Fuchs, the Hall of Famer, and one he won with his wife, Kathy, which we know is a great accomplishment anytime you can win with your wife, giving him the very rare combination of winning 2 world titles in each of the 3 major disciplines. He's won 2 open doubles, 2 open singles, and 2 mixed doubles. Only 2 other players have ever done that, by the way. And what are their names? A couple guys named Fred and Todd. How about that? His 4 world titles during the 90s are the 3rd most during that decade, behind Todd Loffredo, who won 6 doubles world championships, and Terry Moore, who won world titles in all 3 disciplines. By the way, that year, that decade, in the 1990s, Cindy had won 13 world championships. How about that? A true showman on the table, and certainly a class act off the table. One of our favorite people. He remains one of the game's biggest stars, even today. inducted into the Table Soccer Hall of Fame in 2016. Coming in at number 11, the great Tommy Adkisson.
What can you say about Tommy? I mean, you look at the body of work, not just what you spoke to, which I didn't know that he was in that rare company of Loffredo and Fred with the double wins. That's, I mean, okay, that's amazing. But if you just look at the body of work, and then we have to, not unlike Johnny, look at, had he not had a stint where he wasn't playing foosball, what does he add to that list? How much? Those are critical prime years.
He was away at war for 4 years, I believe, right? Late 90s, early 2000s, in the prime of his career.
Prime real estate. I'm easily putting 2 more world titles in there somewhere, whether it's mixed or singles or doubles. I'm putting 2 in there easily. That's probably conservative. He was in that era. We were all rookies together. I mean, when I started to get to know Tommy, he was already a novice, but he was winning all the novice stuff. So Tommy was cleaning house on the novice stuff in the Midwest and the East, and Fernando was cleaning up all the novice stuff on the West Coast. And we're talking like 91, 92. I go out there to Oklahoma with Ken Lowe, and we go to this foosball tournament at Starbucks. It's a draw on one side and a pick your partner on the other side. And I told the story at least one time before. I get the first pick. I could pick whoever I want. I picked Ken Lowe. I could have picked Tommy, but I was there to play Tommy. I was there to compete against Tommy because I've been reading about him in Table Talk magazine. And so I got my partner Ken Lowe, and we crush everybody, all the local, there's a guy named Joe something, and there's Shantae Mendoza, rest in peace. There's these great experts out there. Crush them all. Ken and I just smoke them. We get Tommy, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And Tommy hands my ass to me. And it's clear then. Now there's a gap here. Yeah, I think I'm a good novice out of California, but there's a gap here. That gap only gets bigger and bigger because it's just a couple years later where Tommy doubles the world championships. And we still haven't got our world titles yet. So Tommy's the guy. I got tremendous respect for Tommy. I've also gotten to know Tommy better over the last year. Hung out with him at the Beachtown Beatdown. Hung out with him in Portland, and the dude's a stud. He's just such a good guy who loves the sport. He's watching every match. It doesn't matter if you're expert, designated, handicap, whatever. He loves foosball. He's so passionate about the sport. And here's another guy you could easily argue he's too low on the list. We had to find some consensus, or we wouldn't have had to have the show. We wouldn't have been able to have the show today if we didn't arrive somewhere. So I hope Tommy, the great player he is, he probably believes he should be higher on this list. But he is number 11 this week. And thanks, Tommy, for everything you've done for the sport.
Just to put a different kind of look on this or perspective, I believe the modern era, or at least the inside foos era of foosball, has been coming up on 30 years now in 2023. And during that time period, no other player during that time period have we seen the growth arc of better than Tommy Adkisson.
Yeah, great point.
He went from the bad boy, the new thing, the fast shooter, the motor mouth down there. He had his issues. He came back. He redeemed himself, so to speak, if you want to call it that. I don't think that it's a matter of redemption because we all have to go through what we have to go through, But over the past 30 years or so, we've seen him grow into the man that we know him today. And I've gotten to get to know him and his wife, Kathy, who is a great fooser in her own right. Gotten to get to know them, and they are such great people. But Tommy, behind the scenes, that I don't think most people ever know the kind of things he does behind the scenes as an advocate for foosball and foosball players is a tremendous thing to see him. And I don't know, I don't pretend to know. I'm not going to read into his mind what he's doing or why he's doing what he's doing. All I know is this is a man that will show up at your kindergartner's DYP and watch a match on a Thursday at 2 p.m, because why not? And because that's Tommy. He loves the sport. He loves the game. He loves everything about it. And that's very much noticeable. And you see that story play out in the Inside Foos tape over the last 30 years. And I'm just so happy. We could talk about how much higher he should be on the list, and that's obviously a thing. But just as a man, it's just great. I'm just so happy to see him on here.
Top 10 for among foosball men for sure.
Yeah.
And a guy but I guess that's, again, just a testament to how good this top 10 is going to be. Let's recap tonight. Rick Martin coming in at 20, Tony Bacon at 19, number 18 was Steve Murray, 17, Jim Wiswell, Dave Gumason at number 16, the great Laurie Schramz at number 15, number 14 was Robert Mattis, 13, Mike Bowers, Johnny Horton at 12, and Tommy Adkisson at number 11. Then there were 10 guys.
Oh.
And talk about the biggest names in the history of the sport. There were 10 remaining.
May I interject at this point, because I'm privy to a lot of, shall we say, behind the stage information when it comes to today's list. And I have to say, I was astounded, even as late as an hour before the show, how much you guys were debating what just transpired, this list, and the disagreements between you all about who should go where.
We're putting on a good show because we want to respect and admire and recognize with acknowledgement where these players land.
Yes.
But if there was no one else listening, Jim and Adam and I would be at each other's throats about how this number should have played out. So.
And again, it just displays the passion we have for this project and
yes.
our great love of the history of the sport. And I can't help it. These guys are just both wrong most of the time, and I'm right. And so it's hard to get past that. It really is.
I love
Jim
it.
is senile, by the way, like medicated.
even it's senile, I have a much sharper perspective on this. Even though
don't feed him, Mark.
It is. I take great pleasure in being able to step back objectively and watch the fireworks. It's just it's so much fun.
It is, and the thing about it is, I mean, how many players, how many fans in the sport have the perspective to go from the 70s right on through the 2020s, right? And both Adam and Mark, to their credit, are brilliant foosball men with a great respect and understanding of the history.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever they decide has great value, and they're going to have reasoning behind it. But that's also what makes this all so very interesting, is that we do, along with Dave Gumason, the fourth person who voted in this, we all have our own individual perspectives on this and our own individual thoughts on who should be where. And it gets a little heated, but again, that's just, a testament to how passionate we are about this project.
Well, you're not going to make the list if you've never met or played against Mark Torres. So,
yeah, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Or I've never seen you play. I've never heard of you. But you know what? I'll just say a quick word. Go ahead, Adam.
Oh, no, go ahead. I didn't know if you were going to intro into our guest, who I know is waiting in the wings, but go ahead, Mark.
No, just 10 seconds. Laurie Schramz. So Ken Allwell called me like a week ago. It's a blur now. I don't know. Laurie Schramz taught Jim Wiswell how to block. Both Doug Furry and Jim Wiswell how to block. They didn't know how to block. And in Ken's mind, Laurie invented the 3-man defense that bricked his push kick. So like Laurie, like any one of these people, including Laurie, Robert Mares, Tommy, they could be argued up into this list, and I would resign. It's like I could hear arguments out. I'm open. That's how heated it gets. I mean, these names could be moved around, and Laurie could be argued into the top 10 easily.
Laurie's at 15, basically based on a 6-year career, right? What if that continues? What if that career continues? Where does she end up?
Yeah, and how much do you apply to people that were novel and entrepreneurs of the sport? Like Laurie is figuring out defenses that we still use. So I mean, it's really difficult, and it's very cool in its own way.
It's super cool, buddy.
Adam, speaking of cool.
Yeah.
Do we want to let Mike Green say anything?
I think Mike, of course, because he's been with us before, he knows the routine. Mike, are you in Florida this evening? Are you? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. How you doing?
Not bad, Mike. It's great to have you back on the show. So now I know you got a chance to listen to this list. Did it move you in one way or the other?
Well, I got to tell you, better you guys than me. I'll tell you that. Because I got to tell you, when you guys started this, I started jotting names down, and then I was thinking about like wins, and then I was thinking about eras, and I was thinking about money, and then I started thinking about like Terry Moore, who basically, in my opinion, probably, changed the game, period, as of 1990. It just took it into something like the past didn't exist anymore as far as the game and the shot. And so, yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. And then I'm thinking about Laurie, and I'm thinking like I only saw her like once or twice play. then you guys start talking about her again, and it brings back these memories, and you're just like, oh my gosh. I mean, it just makes your head explode trying to think about all these things, but
no, it's
interesting.
do you think it's balanced as far as all the generations, the different eras? Does it feel balanced to you?
Well, I mean, a long time ago, me and Gumason talked about this. I mean, it's always going to be tough because, you're going to be biased
Mm-hmm.
to your era, I mean, it's just that simple to me. When I 81, the bomb tournament of TS was my first, TS Worlds. And, I'm seeing these people, and it's just amazing. I'm just, I'm hearing about them, I'm watching them. And, that's the same year, of course, Cindy Head shows up out of nowhere. And I'm going to watch Lori win women's. And all of a sudden, Cindy shows up and just dominates and wins doubles and singles, and, you're looking at guys. I mean, there's you guys on this list. I mean, like Ronnie Lewis. A lot of people don't know Ronnie Lewis, but what a
Hall of
player!
Famer. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys that
Great tornado player. One of the great tornado players certainly ever. Yeah.
I mean, never have I ever battled against a guy that fierce in my life. I always thought that about Star. Maybe not as talented, but I mean, Star will fight to the death. And when we would play Ronnie, it was like a death match. I mean, it was brutal. So. I mean, you can just, people can argue back and forth, but I mean, the bottom line is you just got to pick some people, period. You got to, and, and honestly, my thoughts were a lot like, should females be on, and I know I'm going to get everybody mad at this.
Uh-oh.
Be on the list, with the male players, and then when you start thinking about Cindy and Lori, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's like damn near impossible. It
was very
difficult
to incorporate that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Mike, as Johnny Horton's partner, a world championship partner, winning in 1985 at the Open Doubles Championship in Dallas. Horton's at number 12. First of all, what do you think about that? A, and really, if things had gone a little differently for Johnny, would he have been much higher on this list?
Well, like I said, my bias, my first thought is, what do you mean, Johnny's? This guy's got to be in the top 5, And I'm thinking, the guy did, I'm thinking about his early years, like 15 or whatever, third for the Porsches, and and then you think, on and how he came back over those years, and he wins singles again, then gets second, I think, in the world with Biney.
Yeah.
But when you really, I mean, honestly, yeah, he's his own, he caused this himself, I mean, I definitely believe he could have been a top 5. But, these guys, I mean, I've always said even, there should be like the players, like even in the Hall of Fame, I always said there should be inductees, and there should be what I don't remember what I called them now, but basically, like the super, masters who lasted the test of time, and, each table and played and, and continue to build titles. But yeah, I mean, Johnny was just his own worst enemy. I mean, he used to make a joke about me and him being controlled chaos. That sounds like a Johnny Horton thing, right? And one day Carl Miller looks at me and goes, only when Mike's playing with you are you a controlled chaos. I mean, Johnny off the reservation, and it's a shame. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, you can't give a guy on what he could have done, I mean, I agree with that. You can't say, okay, he should have, could have, because he didn't. He blew it. But yeah, I absolutely believe he could have. Yeah, without a doubt.
Mike, I'm curious. So you were, I was talking earlier about the fire and ice of Horton and Piney. Would you be the ice in that dynamic? Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, no, I was just the lesser nut.
So you were both nuts. I mean, because you sound pretty balanced. You're just
chaotic
talking
chaos. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does that?
It was a lot different back then. I mean, with Johnny, it was. I mean, I kind of just did along the lines. I stole the Kaiser thing, the Rick Martin or the whoever I gave him that stare down, and I would, at certain times I would just do things I knew how to work Johnny. I knew how to keep him quiet. I mean, one of the things that I would do was when another team was beating us, and we'd be down pretty good, maybe a game going down 2 games, and of course the crowd's going wild because everybody doesn't like Johnny, and And then all of a sudden we're coming back, now, it's tied up. And I look around and I said, Johnny, what do you hear? He goes, what? I go, what do you hear? He goes, I don't hear anything. I go, exactly. Put them away. The crowd ain't got nothing to say now. You just get them fired up in that way, not, his stupidity, going, screaming, throwing things at people. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain with me and Johnny. I think we just both didn't want to lose because the other guy was going to say something about it. You know what I mean? Steve's just a smart player. He's a very intelligent player. Johnny would say a lot of things that Stevie wouldn't say to me because Steve didn't care. Me, I'd get mad. I mean, like if the last time I was on Foosball Radio, the guy said, you guys have the most, whatever he said, the most crazy timeouts. What are you guys talking about? And we're yelling at each other, telling you suck, you got no fire, I get lost, and that was just our style. But no, I don't know. I mean, there's so many people there. I'm going back to the thing about just trying to figure out this list, and it is definitely mind-boggling without a doubt.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling.
I love how you just said like casual, like run, like yelling, screaming, and throwing things at people. We don't get a chance. We don't get a chance to see throwing things at people. Like, you want to elaborate a little bit on Johnny throwing things at? Was that like a thing?
Johnny, that was a lot of people. Your man Doobie kicked his stool at me, almost shot me in the chest through my chest. I mean,
wow.
People were throwing rosin bottles at each other or whatever. Pledge. I mean, they get intense.
Pledge.
It was
good old days.
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure, that's when a lot of people did it kind of full time. So we were always traveling together, and yeah, I mean, it would get pretty intense. I mean, like at the end of the last week at the end where Adrian got mad and threw the ball and busted the chandelier, and they made him pay for it. I mean, when you can get Adrian at that point, it's a different time.
That just amazes me. That just amazes me.
I just want to add a point on this that I broke up fights. It was very intense. Throwing things. I don't think I saw much throwing stuff, but it reminds me of Primate. So that's what I identify you guys with. Anyway, go ahead, Adam.
Wow. Yeah. I was just gonna say, finding out that Adrian Zamora threw a ball and broke a chandelier is like finding out Lassie smoked. Like it's hard for me to wrap my head around it.
God, he was going off telling the whole place what he thought about it.
Right. Everybody smoked in those days, Adam.
Yeah, but Mike, real quick, just to this point, because something that we had Tony Sprademan on a bit ago, and one of the things that he said about this generation of Foosers versus the previous ones is that he called them soft. But he didn't say that so much negatively. As what he was saying is that the environment in which they grew up in, or a second generation family, like not in bars, not getting their asses kicked and stuff behind in that back alley. Is there some credence to that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the funniest thing about us though was after the matches, 20 minutes later, we're all sitting out, front, hanging out, laughing, talking about how crazy it got. I mean, it didn't bother anybody. I mean, the last time I was on the show, I had said that, Tony asked me what I thought. I said, people don't play with any heart anymore. It's like they accept a loss. I mean, and people back then didn't accept it, man. They were, they were fighting to the end no matter what. I mean, one of my favorites was the first time me and Star played on Tornado Worlds, and we played the Smith brothers, and, we already knew the legend, and we beat them 2 straight games. We're going to the third game, and they go get Dave Currington, and Dave walks up. What's the problem? He goes, these guys ain't playing Tornado Texas foosball. And Dave says, well, I don't know what they're playing, but they're kicking your rear end. So I learned their game. So we all walk outside. I'm, great friends. I'd already known Daniel's brother, and he was a great player. And we're laughing and John Smith was going to leave the tournament because Daniel was talking to me. I mean, that's just, it was intense. That's for sure. But
yeah, for sure. John, a very intense player. Let me interject real quick here. One quick question for you about another player on our tonight's 10, 20 through 11. Coming in at number 19, Tony Bacon, a guy that you competed against, a guy that was really maybe the best player of that era, of your era, in the 80s on the Dynamo table. What are your thoughts about Tony at 19 and Tony just generally speaking as a player?
I absolutely me and Mark text back and forth. I mean, I just told him basically my opinion of Tony is I definitely think he should have been in the top 10. And it's partly because of just I played him so many times. People, somebody asked me, Carl Miller said, "Hey, do you remember how many times you played Tony?" And I said, and I don't remember what exactly it is, but I said, not that I was really into it, playing him. I wasn't really worried about it, but it was actually 27. And we were 13-13, and I played him once on Tornado. Me and Tom Muir actually beat him, and I reminded him of that. So anyway, but no, I mean, to me, Tony, it's just, we had no video really, but nobody knows, Tony, Tony did the far wall pass from the back, basically the same series as Tony Spreedeman, but, with brushes and the far wall series, which he learned from Tim Burns. And we always talk, I'm pretty sure, now I could be wrong, that didn't Tony actually get mad? Him and Don got in a fight, and he played with Rick Hernandez, and they actually won a Worlds together in doubles.
Didn't win a Worlds. I believe they won maybe it was the Nationals, but they did have a good finish together, he and Rickster, yeah.
But
yeah.
But I mean, like I said, that's my bias. I mean, to be honest with you, people would probably be surprised, but I would probably put him in front of Johnny. I mean,
wow.
I mean, the only reason and it's funny because, Tony, I seen Tony for the first time in 81, this little kid with this little funny hat on, and I'm watching him, just his cocky attitude. But Tony Bacon is, without a doubt, the most intense player, and they called him, the greatest comeback team, of all time at that time, and for a reason. I mean, we had them 4-0, and he stole every pass, came back, and got a shot to put us away for the World Championships. I blocked him, but I mean, that guy was amazing, and Tony got in a little trouble and had to go away too. So he was wanting to play Tornado. So things happen there too, but
Yeah, for sure. There was. I remember that 85 match, that World Final when you guys played against them. I was in the stands watching that, and I also had a chance to experience Tony Bacon and Don Chalapote's comeback abilities firsthand in 82 at the U.S. Open. But it was a great era. There was a short era, the Dynamo era, but it was your era, really. And I know you went on and played some on Tornado as well. But, again, it's difficult. You said you wouldn't want to have to take this on. It's not easy to combine all the different aspects of foosball to this. And I believe we have another special guest waiting.
We do.
Here, as well. Do we, Tom?
Yes. Talk about intensity and players with passion. Cindy Head is joining us on FoosTalk Live. Cindy, welcome.
Wow.
Well, hello. How are you guys?
We're doing well. How about yourself?
Hi, Cindy.
I'm doing great. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Cindy. How's it going? It's Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Cindy is Torres. I still love you. I still love you.
Hi, Mike.
Since the last time you were on the show.
I still love you as well.
Carrying the torch.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to kiss you on your mouth. Okay, go ahead.
What the hell?
It's interesting. We have not seen Cindy yet. I don't know if you've been following our top 50 greatest players in the history of the American Tour. We are down to the final 10, which we will announce next Sunday night. And it's interesting. We have not seen your name yet. But what makes you join us tonight? What's on your mind?
Well, I heard about your show tonight, and I was just wanting to talk about a few things. The list I heard tonight, I'm very pleasantly surprised. I think because I have been listening to you guys go back and forth with Johnny Lott and his magical list of that golden era. And it just, no disrespect to Johnny. He has given a lot to the sport, but his list drives me freaking bananas.
Do tell.
I just want to say that, again, no disrespect to Johnny, but I really think that Johnny thinks that he's this magical foosball god that has this magical wand, and if he touches you on your shoulder and tell you that's where your history is in foosball, he really believes that. But he's just a man with an opinion, and I have to disagree with a lot of his opinions. He truly thinks that foosball and great players stopped to exist after TS, kind of crumbled. Ooh. And that drives me crazy. And, a lot of those players I didn't get to see because they played before my time. but I'm just not sure how well you can go with his judgment, because some of the players that he rants and raves about, I played, and I just was expecting a lot more after listening to Johnny all those years. And so, like my first tournament in 81, I played the great female players that he was, just nobody comes close to, and it just wasn't really close, in my opinion. And what I'm saying is, comparing to his male list, I'm just not sure how accurate it could really be, because of his point of view on these players. I don't think it's that accurate, is what I'm trying to say. And I just get really crazy when he disregards a lot of the great players like Starcheski and Green and Benitez and, Horton and Murray and the Smiths, all those guys, because they weren't there in the TS era, he really doesn't show respect for these guys. And a lot of these players are massively talented. And just because it wasn't in that golden era clique, he doesn't acknowledge it. So I want to say thank you, because I'm pleasantly surprised with this list tonight.
So you feel it's well balanced?
I think it's pretty good. Yes, so far I think you guys have done a good job. I would like to ask the question, though, about like when you determine the list. Like, let's talk about the ladies. Okay, so when you guys look at the ladies, you have to realize that when we're playing our peers, the other women, okay, when you rank us in that, then you have to look about the top women that are able to jump up to that next level and play the guys. I mean, who are stronger, faster, more endurance. They have more muscle tone. They can last longer. So you guys have to take that in consideration also, that
for sure,
that are able to get up there and compete with them, because you don't really have another level to go above the guys that you go above to compete. Does that make sense to you?
It does. Let me address that, guys. It was something. It was very difficult. Of course, we have to look at how the ladies did against their peers, the ladies. Right. But we also had to factor in how you did against the male players. And if you look at the final 4 ladies on our list, and there were 6 total. But if you look at Tina, and you look at Moya, and you look at Lori, and I'm thinking you probably are going to make an appearance here at some point. But you look at the 4 top ladies, right? And all of you obviously were tremendous against other ladies. All 4 of you also made your marks against male players or in open competition. And so I hope to think, and while again, Cindy, and you know how difficult a list like this can be to put together, all the different things that come into play.
Right.
Including this. I like to think that we considered that, especially when it got down to the final 4 ladies. All of you have had great success in open competition or against male players. And so I would hope that we did. And I hope that certainly I'm waiting for your approval on this, because I value you so much and have such incredible respect for you, that you recognize that we did look at that as well.
Awesome.
I got a very direct question for you, Cindy. So Johnny Lott ended up 21 on our list, and Jim's alluding to it's possible you make an appearance. Let's just do this as just kind of a hypothetical. If you were in your prime and you're playing Johnny Lott in your prime in singles on Tornado, how does that match go?
I win every time.
Yes.
Yes. Will you repeat that one more time, Cindy? Because we're going to cut that audio and I'm going to put it on Facebook.
And I don't mean any disrespect to Johnny, but I'm just telling you, in my prime, I don't care who you were. You better come at me with your game, because I would fight to the end. And I had heart and nothing scared me. So I was dangerous in my prime because nothing scared me. And I played as hard as any man on that table. So
can I chime in on this real quick, Cindy?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Please, Mike.
Please tell them about Johnny Horton's experiences playing with you playing front, because I witnessed it myself. It wasn't something he liked all the time.
You know what? Which one are you talking about, in Atlanta?
I'm talking about a few of them that Johnny, he with that attitude got shut down real quick by a little Southern lady who.
Oh yeah, Johnny.
Or he wasn't about nothing.
I could get in Johnny's head pretty easy, especially on his 5-row. I could shut his 5-row down. Now, not every time, but the times that he had a tail, and it's been so long since I played him. But when I would play him, I could pick up on his tail, and he would get so mad, and then he would get really loud and louder and louder, and a lot of times it still didn't work. But yeah, Mike's right. I could really get on his 5-row, and I beat Johnny a couple of times in the Georgia State tournament. Actually, the one I won, I'm pretty sure I beat him in that one, didn't I, Mike?
Yeah, you did. It's funny because we would watch and people would say the same thing, like, why don't you ever play with Johnny more, Mike? I said, because I can beat him every time.
Exactly. But no, Johnny.
I play somebody that I can, that I want to play somebody I can't beat, so I will play with. But yeah, you had Johnny, even when he won the matches, he'd come over to me afterwards and say, good gracious, that girl don't quit, man. And I just, yeah, you're right about that, brother. But
no, I used to have so much fun playing against the Florida group because of what Mike said earlier. We would go to war. I mean, the table would be rocking and we would be screaming, and I mean, the balls would be flying. But as soon as the match was over, we would be outside laughing and cutting up. And the difference to me in today's players and back in the older day is you could go to war and you could play with every ounce of heart in your body. And nowadays, the players don't have it. They just want to look good, make no noise. It's just they want to win easy, and they don't want to fight. They don't have the heart. And to me, it's not as exciting as it used to be. That's just an opinion, but I just think it's a lot less fun to watch than it used to be.
Was this a consequence of the rules, though? I mean, because you're not supposed to speak, you're not supposed to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also the fact everybody, they want to make it like golf, and we're not golf.
No.
I mean, golf, you're not, 4 feet or whatever from each other's faces going to battle. I mean, you're like gladiators on the front line. You're that close to each other, and you're trying to outplay the other person. And even Friedman said to me, him and Diaz were talking about this same thing. And Bob and Tony says, you'd be shocked to know who one of my favorite players. I go, who? He goes, excuse me, Tommy Adkisson.
Yeah.
I love the antics. I love the game. I love the heart. I love the, and I seen him in West Palm getting on Tommy, saying, Tommy, you're like you're my hero, man. Quit messing around. Be Tommy. Play this game. Play hard. Don't get caught in nonsense, and it's true. People they just don't. I don't know. Anyway, I think Cindy put it better than me, but I agree 1,000%.
I got a question embedded in here, but I carried this torch. You guys know I carried this torch and so long and so hard that Inside Foos TV, which is kind of the social media hub, got burnt out on me talking about how boring the game has gotten. But let's switch gears because I want to talk. It's a pleasure to have Cindy here and you too, Mike. And I make a point on Inside on social media that I want to see if you, because I bet you haven't seen it, Cindy. And so what it is my argument is this. I do firmly admit that the modern foosball player is more skilled. It's just they're benefactors, they're beneficiaries of all the history and why. So the skill is there. But I also make the argument that, unfortunately, when the money leaves the game, you can have more skilled players. But there's also something to be said about championship level play. And championship level play, there is a level of intelligence. There's emotional intelligence. There's analytical ability. There's critical thinking. And I believe that you have less of that as well, too. But when the money leaves the game, you have all these really bright men and women that are approaching the game with a certain analysis and critical thought and commitment, and then the money leaves the game, and frankly, you get less smart people playing foosball over the decades. And I don't believe foosball, although foosball has might have accelerated and elevated in terms of physical ability and skill, I'm not convinced that the intelligence the intellectual aptitude at championship level play continued with the same volume it did in the past. Is there truth to that? Am I in the right space with that comment?
No, I totally agree with you. As for the golden era, you got to think about it. Those guys made enough money; they didn't have to work. Football now, you have to earn a living, so you're having to earn a living, be with, raise your family, and try to play foosball. You got to look at how many hours those guys were able to play, not working. All they did was practice, strategize, come up with they just came out with new defense, new offense, new everything. So that made a huge difference. They were able to be so much smarter because they could put so much more time into it. And they would be more hungry for it because that was their livelihood. That was how they lived.
I'd like to add to that too. I actually wrote this down that if you notice when Terry took over and Robert Mayers, they got in a van and drove the country. That's all they did. And you Friedman, that's all he does. I mean, the guys that dominate have to put the time in. But the second point is I honestly believe that the snake shot has dumbed down this game so much.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
So dumbed down this game that we need a Jim Stevens push kick or a Rick Martin push kick. We need a Thor Donovan pull kick. The last time I was on your show, I said nobody knows how to shift gears anymore. Everybody just plays one speed, and if it don't work, it don't work. Back then you had to play different styles, slow down, speed up, shift gears. You had to adjust. Now it's just so dumbed down to rocket speed. I mean, obviously I'm not talking about Tony and a couple of the other ones, but basically it's just rocket speed, full blast ahead. And if it doesn't work, they don't know how to slow the game down. They don't call timeouts. I've noticed that people have horrible zones. Like nobody plays together on these tables. There's no zones. I know some do, but anyway, that's just one of my points.
The whole snake shot argument is an interesting one with things on both sides, and you illuminated it beautifully because in many ways it certainly has, I think, dumbed things down to a degree. There's an argument on the other side that we could make as well. We got about 7 minutes left in the show, and I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure I asked Cindy a couple of things about a couple of ladies who were direct competitors and in some cases partners of hers, but two ladies who were on our list, who I know that you know extremely well, in both Tina Roton, Tina Wyatt, and Moya Thielens, two ladies who were in the 20s and 30s on our list and who were such great competitors of yours. And in the case of Tina, of course, you played with her, played against her significantly. She was one of your great rivals early on, especially.
She hated me early on. She hated me early on, but later on we became really good friends.
Talk about those two ladies, though. I mean, two of the greats of all time, certainly.
Well, I think they're both awesome. There's one thing about Moya that I want to say, but it would be very controversial, and I don't.
It's the competitor. It's the competitor in you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Doesn't
start. Go ahead.
Okay, let me just say this, and I'm not disrespecting Moya in any way. I had nothing but respect for her game. But I will say this, and I know it was, I know she was fighting demons and she had issues, but I would have to say that I don't respect a lot of her wins because she was so messed up at the time I played her many, many times that I don't feel like that she had to win like the rest of us and beat the elements. She didn't have to feel the pressure. She didn't have to feel the exhaustion for 2 to 3 hours sleep a night. She didn't feel the aches and pains because of the state she was in. She was very, she didn't have to beat the elements. And she did not have to do that to win because her game was amazing. But this is just my opinion for me that I didn't respect a lot of her wins because of the state she was in when she won. But as far as
you have it on good opinion that there was a different state, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, because she would be really, really high, and you don't fight the elements when you're like that. You don't feel the pressure, you don't feel the pain, you don't feel the exhaustion, and not just her. There were men like that, like Horton. I don't respect a lot of his wins. And this doesn't reflect anybody else. This is just my opinion. I just don't give a lot of her wins merit because I don't think she got them like everybody else did, fighting the elements. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
When you were going to start this off, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But I knew it was going to be the competitor in you speaking. And you're so passionate about your wins and your losses, clearly. And you're the great Cindy Head. So I mean, I don't really have any criticism of what you're saying. There were a lot of guys and gals that won like that, and I never knew when they were or weren't loaded, if you will, if you want to call it that. And it's just, I totally get it. I understand where you're coming from, and it's unfortunate that maybe those wins don't have the same precedent. That it's what's clear now is you were always fighting the elements, is what I'm hearing from you now. So.
That's just the merit for me. That's not anybody else's opinion or views. That's just for those times that, and I can name several of them. I just did not have the respect for those wins. But her game and her skill was amazing. Don't think I'm taking away from that because she was amazing.
Yes, the same argument could be made for other major league sports, including baseball.
Exactly.
Doping and that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. How would let's say a Ryan Nolan compare to Babe Ruth? I mean, there's no drugs involved.
Right.
Babe Ruth. And he drank and
but there was cigars and there was that dude was coping in other ways though. So let's be honest.
Guys, there's a difference. There is a difference in being a little high and being really, really where you don't feel the pressure. You don't feel the pain. You don't feel the exhaustion. That's not beating the elements. And I'm sorry, that's just not winning it like you should win it.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, there's been drug testing throughout, obviously different sports and at times even in foosball internationally. And there's also the argument of whether that actually helps you or really in the long run hinders you. And certainly we don't need to get into that necessarily. But, we have a couple of minutes left and I don't want to leave this one hanging too much. But do you have any final thoughts about Johnny Lott?
I think Johnny Lott is a legend in his own mind, and he gets better as each year goes by. That's the best description I can give you.
That's hilarious.
And no disrespect, Johnny, but, I call it like I see it.
But so, I mean, and also just, did he feel the elements and not...
I didn't really see him play that many years because he was, my first big tournament was 81. And when I won doubles and singles, and then it pretty much in TS went down after that. So I didn't really go to a lot of TS tournaments. So I didn't really see Johnny play. But I will tell you this, I had a lot of older players that played TS that actually told me this. Now, Johnny, don't kill me. I'm just a messenger. That told me that Johnny Lott was one of the reasons that they had to change the jarring rule, that he jarred so much back then.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know because I never saw it.
Surprising at all. Why is it even a mystery?
I mean, I've played him and I'm not shocked.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know because I didn't watch the man play, but I'm telling you, I've had 3 older TS players tell me that. And, I just...
And that very well may be true. I certainly can, I think, attest to that possibility could be true as well.
I think,
I want to take
right
a
up against it.
Mark,
I don't know if we have a minute left, maybe.
I want to sprint and tell a story because Ken Alwell tells this story, and I think it harkens back or brings us in to the spot we talked about with the one thing that might have been missing from the sport. So I'm going to tell the story quickly. Ken Alwell watched Tommy Adkisson, who I know he's listening, watch Tommy Adkisson win double on the Inside Foos videotapes in preparation for playing at the Worlds in '94. He watches and studies Tommy Adkisson, and he studies some other great players, and then he gets Tommy Adkisson in the first round of Open Mixed and beats Tommy Adkisson. He proceeds to smash all the Masters up to getting to Loffredo in the finals of Open Mixed at the Worlds. And the only reason why I'm telling this story is because it is a great testament to what the game was missing when the era died. When the golden era died, a lot of bright, smart players did stop playing, and Tommy Adkisson, frankly, was missing Ken Alwell. Tommy Adkisson was probably missing Furry. And these guys might not have had the skill to keep up, but they would have the intelligence. And I just wanted to get that out there because I think it closes the loop on when we start differentiating between the eras. I think you're right. I think there is something delusional.
We'll continue it next week. I've got things to say on that one as well. That maybe
actually
we'll give you a different.
Well, I just wanted to say that Johnny Lott is probably delusional about his skill and how these players would rate. And I think Cindy and Mike, and to a lesser extent me, are also correct that might have been a gap between the generations. Right. Anyway, here we are.
Cindy,
right up against it.
This is
Cindy, Mike. Thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate it.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, no, it's and happy Christmas belated, but happy New Year and the rest. And thank you so much for brightening our show tonight. We really appreciate it, Mike and Cindy. I think we can make another show out of this for sure. But,
I'll come on with Cindy anytime. We got a lot of old stories.
Oh yeah,
Next week. Come back next week.
Yeah, next week.
If we invite us, we'll be there. I'll be there.
Cool.
Let's go.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right,
all right, guys.
Great time, everybody. Thank you.
And thanks so much for tuning into FoosTalk Live. Next week, it is the top 10 most, shall we say, the most talented players of all time in the American Tour. We're going to be presenting that to you, and we're looking forward to that. In the meantime, we hope that you have a very happy New Year, and we will meet you in 2022 on FoosTalk Live.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Bye. Happy New Year.
Foos and FoosTalk Live proudly present Shooting the Shot with Clay Toomey, Tuesdays.
Gee, nobody knows who you are, guy across the table from me. So introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you here for? Why are you here? What's the meaning of life?
My name is Mark Torres. I'm here because I'm a passionate guy around foosball. I get the bug like you do, or however we get the bug.
Yeah.
And the meaning of life is captured in infinitesimal life forms. You got to see like ants, man. Ants tell you why. It's about community and leaving something behind. The propagation of the species. That's the meaning.
Shooting the Shot with Clay Toomey this Tuesday. Find it on Podbean or foosballradio.com. FoosTalk Live is a product of Inside Foos, all rights reserved. Brought to you in part by InsideFoos.com, Protectoflex, Rodlock, 518 Prints, Foosballers the Movie, the USTSO, and Foosball Clubs USA. Tune in again next week for another episode of FoosTalk Live. In the meantime,
we'll see you foozin'.